Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. This is Eisenherz and today I have the second part in a mini-series about brewing for cEDH. My goal with this series is to share my thought process and some general principles when brewing a cEDH deck, so that you have a frame of reference to optimize your brews in the future. Last time I explained the differences as well as the pros and cons of top-down versus bottom-up brewing. You can find the video in the top right corner. Now that you know how to approach choosing a commander or strategy, let's talk about choosing the right cards for your deck. When brewing a new deck, there are generally three kinds of cards you have to be aware of. First, there are the cEDH staples. Second, there are the auto-includes or packages for certain strategies. And third, there are the unique cards for certain commanders. Let's have a look at the staples first. Staples are cards that have proven to be so good in what they do that most cEDH decks play them if they can. These are overall useful cards you want to play anyways, like duels and fetches for lands, Mana Crypt, Soldering and Mana Dogs for ramp, Rhystic Study and Mystic Remora for card draw, Force of Will and Pact of Negation for interaction, Demonic Tutor and Gamble for tutoring, and Swords to Plowshare and Abrade for removal. These cards are the best at what they do, but it's important to understand that not all staples can and should be played in every deck. A. You have limited slots, so you can't just jam every piece of interaction or removal into your deck. Think about what cards you need to remove and choose the right staples based on that. B. Staples also include common combo pieces and enablers like Ad Nauseam, but it doesn't make a lot of sense to play Ad Nauseam in a mid-range deck with a highish mana curve, and it doesn't make sense to play Twin Flame in a creatureless poly list, so keep that in mind. And C. Some cards outright number with each other, although being staples, like Rule of Law effects and Underworld Breach lines. I personally see this mistake way too often in some brews I review for the decklist database. Anyway, you can find a list of cEDH staples on Moxfield. This list is maintained by Nullmage, takes its data from the decks on the cEDH decklist database, and is regularly updated. Also, Moxfield has a function to auto-include all legal cEDH staples and a cEDH land base for any deck you are brewing. Just click the lightning bolt right here, then click Add Sample Land Base, as well as Add cEDH Staples, and boom, your brew now has all the staples and a sample land base. Again, keep in mind though that a cEDH staple is good at what it does, but that doesn't mean that you have to play it. Staples are a pool of cards you can be certain are good, but you will have to choose the amount and kind of spells you want in your deck. Let's now have a look at the auto-includes or packages. These are cards that are not cEDH staples because they aren't played in the majority of decks overall, but they are basically staples for certain strategies. Imagine you are building a Protean Hulk deck. What do you need? Well, at the very least a sack outlet like Carrion Feeder or Viscera Seer, and some Hulk piles like these. These are not cEDH staples, but they are Hulk staples if you want. Of course, you don't need all the possible Hulk piles, but the most efficient ones should be in your deck, because they are tried and true. Another example for these auto-includes would be adding Life and Death to a Rothercat strategy, adding certain untap in a Birthing Pod deck, or exile effects and cast from exile creatures for a Food Chain deck. These cards just go hand in hand, so playing one without the other makes little sense. Alright, you have added the cEDH staples that make sense in your deck, as well as all the auto-includes for your strategy, and you are most likely left with a fairly generic so-called shell. The shell is pretty similar in most cEDH decks with certain strategies. Hulk Deck A doesn't look too different from Hulk Deck B, especially when they are in similar colors. And even most decks with the same colors also have a high amount of overlapping cards, even if their strategies are different, just because of all the cEDH staples. So you will most likely be left with a few open slots in your deck, usually more in lower colored decks or top-down brews, and less in higher colored decks or bottom-up brews. These open slots can be used to add unique cards that synergize in a meaningful way with your commander or strategy. Usually these cards see very little if any play in other cEDH lists, but are so strong in your deck that you need to play them. Let's have a look at some examples. For Urza, it would obviously be Winter Orb, Static Orb, and Trinisphere. For Orva, it's the Twiddle effects. For Krark decks, it would be Krark's Thumb. For Yuriko, it's the suite of evasive 1-drops and expensive trigger targets. For Anya, it's all the Madness cards. And for mid-range Thrasios, it's Training Grounds and Seedborn Muse. So, do all decks have unique cards? No. Some decks and strategies are so efficient they solely rely on staples and auto-includes, and some commanders don't warrant playing unique cards because their impact will be too low. That might be boring when brewing, but it works. Other decks have way more unique cards and way less staples because they have a unique strategy that requires specific cards, but is strong enough to be competitively viable. So the next time you brew a list around a commander or strategy, add the cEDH staples, add the auto includes, and add the commander specific unique cards. Finally, cut your deck down to 100 cards and you should be left with a solid starting point for further optimization. These last two steps can of course be pretty hard when a new viable commander or promising card has been printed, because you don't know yet which unique cards will perform well with the commander or if a card is worth including in your deck. But don't worry, I got you covered. The next video in this series will be about new cards and how to properly test them. And that's it with the second part of this mini-series on the 101 of cEDH Brewing. If you enjoyed the video, please like, share, sub, comment, become a Patreon, and of course don't forget to hop over to my new Discord server, which will be linked down below. This is Eisenherz and auf Wiedersehen.